Hey guys, had a request come in, or I've actually had several requests come in on some videos that I'm planning on making. Just been busy the past couple weeks, but I'm gonna do this one really quick. Um, there's not as much to it as some people think. I saw a lot of people at the track or the track I race at losing gears, stripping gears, having problems, coming with their gears coming out and stuff, and then just chewing the teeth up. And um, I was asked, why I never, have had any of those issues. I think I've actually had, other than, being in a wreck and, the rear end coming loose, something coming loose. I've ran gears for as I can't remember losing a gear, during a race or anything like that, or shearing the teeth off one or anything like that. So this video is going to be, a simple, setting your gears. And there's not a lot to it. A lot of the problems I see people are having is they're running their gears too loose. Or I should say, that is the problem I'm seeing. And I'm going to go over a little bit. And this is, I do this all by feel. There's no way I can give you an exact measurement on any of this. So I'm going to show you what I do. I'm going to go over an inline, and I'm going to go over an angle winder, and then we're going to go from there. We'll start with the angle winder, we'll start with the inline. This is basically an FCR chassis, or an FCR type chassis. Overlook how dirty it is. I just picked it up off the counter over here, and it's one that I haven't even been running here lately. But we'll start with it, and I'll show you the first thing I do to it, and then we'll go from there. The gear ratio on this, I believe, is it's either a 1326 or 1327. It's a car we run. It's actually a 1327. Car we run on our high banked oval track. We're running Retro Eagles in these things, and that seems to be a good gear ratio. But this process goes for no matter what gear you run. I go through the same process. So I've set this up a little loose. The gear's not even set on the gear. But first thing I see, and when people's asked me to check their cars, or check their gear, or feel their gear, or why does this sound like this? First thing I check is the play back and forth. And what I'm talking about is the rear end play this way. So I'm not trying to do this while holding this camera, but this is what I see a lot of times. When I get somebody's car, they will have their play back and forth about like that. And I've set that intentionally because that's a typical what I see. This may be upside down. So that's what I see. I see the play, set about that loose. So if you set that gear or set that play back and forth that loose, and I've got this gear it's not tightened down, it's sliding on the axle. So what happens is when this car goes into a turn, we're going to talk about like a left turning oval. What happens is when this goes into the turn, the chassis, or actually the tires are wanting to grip the track, the chassis is wanting to slide to the outside. So what happens is, say if you're running play down the straightaway like this thing goes into the turns, and I'm going to say it goes into the turns like this just for example purposes. and the tires grip, the chassis sling to the outside. Well, it pushes the gear closer. See how I'm pushing that gear closer? Well, it pushes that gear closer into the pinion. So the reason why I'm telling you that is, however you set this back and forth, however you set the play, you always set the gear lash to the tightest point that it can go, that the chassis can pull over to the left. That's on left turning ovals. So, but if you're running road courses or anything like that, you still want to do that, because what happens is when this thing shifts around, if it shifts and gets to a point that you have no play, you're causing binding or resistance, which is going to slow your speed down. So, and I apologize for all the sniffling. I've been sick for the past week, it seems like. So, first thing, you want to get this play tightened up, and I'm going to show you one for time restraints. I'm going to show you one that's about right. So I'm going to set this down. So, key example of when you got too many stock cars, when it takes you that long to find something. So here's one that is actually set about correct, or pretty close. So what I do is, when I have this thing set, as long as I can feel, and you can see that gear's not moving hardly any, but I can take this and I can feel play back and forth. You can see that gear moving very so slightly, but that's a big difference in that and what I see a lot of times with other people that's like this. See, that's what I call excessive play. So that's the first problem I see in a lot of people's gears, or they're running into problems. Because even if they get them set tight, or even if they get them set correctly, you know, when this right tire is pushed in all the way it can push in, that simulates the chassis, you know, sliding to the left, and the tightest part of the gear, you know, with the tires pushing to the left, chassis sliding to the right. Even if they get it set correctly here, they have so much play, when it slides over here, it's going to be way too loose. And that's what causes you to shear the teeth off these gears. So, like I said, I don't have an exact measurement. Tighten your rear ends up to where you can barely feel a little bit of play back and forth. That's all you need. That's all you need. You know, some people's gonna say, oh, if you run it looser, that's speed, that's less friction. Well, it probably is if you want to go through a gear every couple weeks. You will pick up the speed you're gaining from the looseness in the smoothness you will gain from your gear. Because what happens is when you run that real loose, that gear's going to be noisy, it's going to be flopping around, it's going to create friction flopping around that'll equal to where if that gear's running smooth and straight and in the same place all the time. So it will balance out. So setting the inline gear, when you get that rear just where you can barely feel play back and forth, you just want to barely feel some play back and forth, bolt your motor down in the inline, solder it down, whatever you want to do, and you'll start adjusting this gear. When you adjust this gear, you want to push in, like push in this way with this right tire, and you want to feel just a little bit of play. Tighten it down. You want to turn that gear over a couple teeth, push it in this way, and feel just a little bit of play. Boy, I've been on the medicine, shaking. Turn it over a couple teeth, push it in, and feel just a little bit of play. What you want to do is go all the way around that pinion, pushing in and feeling a little bit of play. What you're doing is a lot of these, especially these big crown gears, and you know, if you run big pinions on angle winders and stuff like that, or even these, you will find a tight spot in this gear. Find the tight spot and set it to its tightest point on that tightest spot, and that's all you got to worry about. If you ask how tight to set it as tight as you can get it to where you feel a little bit of lash back and forth. All you got to do is feel it. If you can feel it, a little bit of lash back and forth, that's all you need in its tightest spot. So don't just stick it in there, turn it a couple times, set it in one spot and leave it and think you're done. You're not done right there. You might be setting it in its loosest spot of the gear, and you know, it might tighten up, and you might set it, turn it a couple times and feel it, and it not have any play. What you want to do is find that tightest spot of the gear and then set it. Same thing with these. This is a scratch built angle winder chassis, but there's all kinds of angle winder chassis. Same thing with these. You know, we're running ball bearings in these. You can actually run ball bearings even tighter. If you can see that, I'm not even sure you can see that, but there's just a little bit of back and forth play right there. I mean, just enough where you can feel it. That's all you need. If you get it flopping back and forth, that's what'll chew your gears up. If you go down here and look at the gear, all you're looking for is just a little bit of play back and forth. That's all you're looking for. And when you set these gears, you're doing the same thing. You're turning it over, setting it, turning it over, setting it, turning it over, setting it. When you find that tight spot on the gear, set it on the tight spot, as tight as you can set it, with feeling a little bit of play, and then it'll be the same everywhere else. That's all you got to do.